On Friday the 2nd of May, the Labour Party woke up to some quite dreadful headlines about the meltdown that they'd experienced in the local elections the day before. Now, in Newcastle, they may have had some grounds for thinking that things couldn't have got any worse, and perhaps the only way to go was up. But actually, the results turned out to be an even worse meltdown for the Labour Party in Newcastle, and indeed they actually lost seats to the Liberal Democrats. Now, I'm joined by John Shipley, who's leader of Newcastle City Council, leader of the Liberal Democrat group and leader of the council. John, 3 gains from Labour after they'd gone down through their meltdown 4 years ago. You're now the biggest Liberal Democrat group in the country with 49 councillors.
49, yeah.
So you're the biggest group. So what we're all wanting to know is, what is the secret of your success?
Oh, the secret is hard work and delivering the commitments that you make and communicating those successes. So keeping council tax rises under the rate of inflation 4 years in a row, improving the environments of neighbourhoods with more being spent on graffiti cleaning, on roads and pavement repairs, with neighbourhood response team, 3 dedicated staff to every single ward in the city, much improved recycling rates, much improved educational performance, and stripping out waste. Our changes, transformation in our city service operations, which is basically all our front office and back office operations and council tax collection and benefits administration and so on. We've saved over £20 million now in the last 4 years. So all of this is testimony to a great deal of hard work by ourselves as a group and our officers, and it shows that it can be delivered.
Right. Now, the Labour Party was suggesting in the press that before the elections that they would be able to pick up seats from the Liberal Democrats, but they went into a further decline. So what is the cause of that decline? Why have Labour done so badly in Newcastle?
Well, it's partly national. It's partly that the Labour Party were doing so badly under Gordon Brown, but it's also because people remember their bad record. Council tax rises 3 times the rate of inflation since 1997, and a total failure actually to provide the strategic vision and management of the council, which we have done. And interestingly, Labour talked about how they were going to make gains before the election, but actually last Friday, when they'd lost further seats to us, they began to make out that somehow we had failed in our mission because we ought to have won even more seats from them, given the national situation. The truth is that we got 49 seats. We've become that biggest council group now in the UK, and that's a testimony to the hard work of all of those who've been involved: councillors, deliverers, envelope stuffers, printers and so on.
OK, so there's one other party that's a mainstream party, which is Tyneside's third party, the Conservatives. Now, they are without representation for, I think it's the 12th year now, on Newcastle City Council.
Yes, worse than that, it's 16 years since they actually won a seat. So 1992 was the last time they actually won an election in Newcastle.
Yeah. Now, some of us with long memories remember the Conservatives used to hold seats like Fenham and Gosforth and so on. Why is it they're, well, just not on the radar screen?
It's a legacy of the Thatcher years. Tory voters got very disillusioned with the Conservative Party under Mrs Thatcher and then John Major, perceived to be a party of South East England. And we then made gains against them, we made gains against Labour. And the electorate has realised that if they don't want Labour in Newcastle, then the Lib Dems are the best people to prevent that happening. But it's a bit more than that. It is that in policy terms, in terms of what we're trying to deliver, we actually have struck a chord with the electorate. The grain of what the electorate wants to do is actually to be found with the Liberal Democrats now, and not with any other party. And so there is actually no point or advantage in voting Conservative unless you're absolutely die-hard, because the vote in practice will not elect a Tory and could, through the back door, elect a Labour councillor.
Now, one of the groups of people most interested in local election results was actually the parliamentary candidates, and I'm joined by Ron Beadle, who's the parliamentary candidate for Newcastle North. Ron, am I speaking to the next MP for the constituency?
Well, the answer, Jonathan, is you might be, and that's the answer, of course, that we always give. in the run-up to general elections, but we really believe it now. This is the third set of local elections in which we've gained over 50% of the vote in Newcastle North, and Labour are now down to 26%, with the Tories on 14%. So there really is a good basis to believe that we can take the constituency at the next general election.
But what's different between now and, say, results from earlier this decade, where, again, we were ahead of Labour in that constituency, but we then went on not to win the constituency at the general election? So what's different now?
I think two things. I think, firstly, we are much further ahead than we were. Labour down to 26% is a historic low. Secondly, geographically, we are no longer concentrated just in the north of the constituency, which, for people who know it, is Gosforth. We've won seats in the outer west of the constituency for the first time in 25 years in Newburn and in Leamington. So that last Thursday, we won 8 of the 9 wards that were up in Newcastle North. We have more activists. We have 23 of the 27 councillors in the constituency. We're better organised, and Labour is in much a worse state.
What state is the Conservative Party in your constituency? Because there was a time, decades ago admittedly, when the Conservatives held Newcastle North, and there is talk of a Cameron effect, although they didn't seem to affect the results in Newcastle this time round. But what's actually happening to the Conservative vote on your patch?
Well, it is fair to say that the Conservatives have delivered leaflets and had candidates everywhere this time, something they signally failed to do in 2004 and in 2006. They've actually delivered leaflets in more of the wards than they did previously. But it hasn't had an effect on the electorate, and for this simple reason, that people across Newcastle North know that if they want to beat Labour, they've got to vote Liberal Democrat. That said, Tory votes could, in the end, if they stay with the Tories, stop us winning at the general election. So we need Liberal Democrats to get on the doorstep, talking to Conservatives in Newcastle North, explaining to them why a Conservative vote is a wasted vote.
Beadle, thank you very much.